Hi, my name is Jean Kim, and this is my museum visit and analysis project. So, the museum I went to was the Baltimore Museum of Art, and I went with my classmates, and this is a picture of me at the museum with a classmate. The three artifacts that I chose are Walrus Beer Pitcher by Carl L.H. Muller, Vanity by Gilbert Road, and New Lots Express Brooklyn by Reginald Marsh. So the first artifact is entitled Walrus Beer Pitcher. The materials are enameled and glazed hard paste porcelain. It looks like a large pitcher with the beak of the pitcher shaped as a walrus and some sort of mammal on the handle of the pitcher. I was honestly drawn to this artifact because of its really vibrant colors and really pretty shade of light blue, which stood out as a pop of color to the relatively muted surrounding works. However, when I looked closer, there was a depiction of what looked like a white guy dressed as a pirate choking a guy who I assumed was Chinese, due to his exaggerated, quote-unquote, oriental hairstyles and clothes. The white guy was holding the Chinese man by the throat. The white guy is standing taller than the Chinese man, while the Chinese man, who looks terrified, is smaller and backing away. To be honest, the racist imagery really took me by surprise because from afar, I had just thought it was some pretty picture. It was designed by Carl L.H. Muller, who was born in Koblenz, Germany in 1820 and died in New York City in 1887. The manufacturer was Union Porcelain Works in New York, who produced porcelain from 1863 to 1922. This pitcher was manufactured in 1876 for the 1876 Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia. A beer pitcher, so a vehicle to provide the people of America with more alcohol. The beer pitcher was also an ode to a poem titled Heathen Chinese by Bret Harte. The poem was originally satire on America's racist attitudes on Chinese immigrant laborers. However, the beer pitcher misinterpreted the poem, and its racist imagery was actually praised for at the time and a bestseller amongst consumers. I chose this artifact because of how taken aback I was when I actually looked closely at the picture, which maybe says how normalized and integrated outright racism was at the time. I related this artifact to the issues of immigration, migration, and law policy. The pitcher was manufactured a few years before the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which was the first time the American government enacted a law barring entry of immigrants from a specific country of origin. The racist imagery on the pitcher and the good's popularity show the growing racist sentiment against Chinese people, which was in large part to the influx of Chinese immigrants who had, in the perspective of white Americans, been stealing jobs from the white labor force. The xenophobia among white Americans also is rooted in WASPism, where the white Americans view the Chinese as culturally and racially inferior. This ties into the topic of law policy and shows us how legislation has historically maintained systems of power and privilege. The Chinese Exclusion Act is just one of the few discriminatory laws which maintain the dominance of white Americans while marginalizing non-white immigrants. To this day, immigrants have been discriminated against via policy. Most recently, the Trump administration implemented various policies which aimed at restricting the influx of immigrants from Mexico. For example, the implementation of the Remain in Mexico policy forced asylum seekers arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border to wait in Mexico while their immigration cases were processed in U.S. immigration courts. This policy failed to provide adequate protection for vulnerable individuals fleeing persecution and failed to provide refuge to those fleeing persecution in their homes. This artifact underscores the deep-rooted nature of racism in American society. The racist imagery on an everyday household item shows how intertwined racism is into our society and the prevalence of racial prejudice in everyday life. It also speaks on the historical exploitation and dehumanization of minority groups to protect the power of whiteness within the context of American history. This can be seen today with the immigration crisis on the U.S.-Mexican border, highlighting how xenophobia is still an issue that persists to this day. And because of how historically persistent this issue is, it is imperative to confront the systemic manifestations of racism against immigrants. The second artifact I chose is entitled Vanity, and it also has a self-explanatory name. It's a vanity. There are 3 circular mirrors which reflect different angles of the viewer. The mirrors are attached on top of a wooden table/drawer with a small enclave and desk area in the middle where I suppose a seat would go. The wood looked expensive and laminated with embellishments and fancy knobs. And upon reading the plaque, the expensive materials were a selling point of the vanity, made of East Indian rosewood, sequoia burl veneers, ebonized plywood, vinyl-coated fabric, brass, and brass-plated steel. The vanity was definitely an expensive commodity. It was designed by Gilbert Rode, who was born in 1894 in New York City and died in 1944, also in New York City. The vanity was manufactured by the corporation Herman Miller Incorporated in Zeeland, Michigan. The company was founded in 1923 and is still a functioning business entity to this day. The purpose of the artifact was for women to get a better look at themselves as they got dressed up. It was also a commodity which garnered capital for the Herman Miller Furniture Company for the growing market of middle to upper class women who wanted the newest thing to make them and their house look good. The vanity was sold in the Herman Miller Furniture Company's catalog in 1940, titled The Bedroom Group, a way to market furniture for the stylish American home. This artifact interested me because I'm a girl and have been interacting with products that are meant to help make me beautiful my whole life. Growing up, I always saw my mom putting makeup on in front of her vanity, and I think the correlation between the concept of womanhood and the use of a vanity is really interesting. In the media as well, a woman typically gets ready in front of a vanity, which strengthens the connection between beauty and vanity. I correlated this artifact to two big issues: women's history and social class and stratification. I think it's really interesting how women's beauty is commodified and how beautification and becoming more beautiful has been a way to garner profits. But what does it mean to be beautiful? Who decides the standard of beauty? Although beauty standards are subjective and can vary across space and time, it's been seen in history that those who have the most power in society determine the beauty standard. Those who profit from beauty dictate what's considered beautiful, exploiting women's insecurities in a never-ending cycle of consumption. But not everyone can fit into these standards, making women feel inadequate or not wanted by society. This ties beauty deeply with a woman's sense of identity, and then beauty becomes more than just physical appearance. It becomes intertwined with feelings of self-worth and societal acceptance. The pressure to conform to these standards can have detrimental effects on self-esteem, reinforcing harmful stereotypes and perpetuating inequalities based on appearance. This ties into social class and stratification. Because only a few can afford products like the vanity, higher income individuals often have greater access to a wider range of beauty products. This creates a disparity, as those with more financial resources can more easily afford to conform to societal beauty standards, further reinforcing class distinctions. It's also important to note that the beauty standard is whiteness, which exacerbates racial inequalities within the perception of beauty. And since beauty is aligned with class, it further accentuates the racial dimensions of beauty standards, highlighting the systemic obstacles faced by those who deviate from the white beauty ideal. This artifact shines a light on the issue of beauty and commodification in America. Although this product was sold back in the 1940s, the marketing of beauty products continues to skyrocket in modern times. This speaks on the exploitative nature of capitalism in America, where profit is derived from garnering off of society's set preferences. The pressure of beauty is one that is prevalent in American culture, and as the American beauty standard is one of whiteness, there is a cynical effect on the women of color who do not fit this narrow standard. The third artifact that I chose was a painting entitled New Lots Express Brooklyn by Reginald Marsh. The artifact is a painting of a crowded subway with people of different ethnicities, sexes, and wardrobe in the cart. It's interesting to note, however, that the men and women on the cart are divided. The women are in the front of the painting and are in color, while the rest of the painting, including the men, are in black and white. They are sitting close with each other and seem to be doing their own thing amongst each other's company on the ride. The painting is made of egg tempera with glazes on Masonite. The painting was made in 1934 and is entitled New Lots Express Brooklyn by artist Reginald Marsh, who was born in Paris, France in 1898 and died in Dorset, Vermont in 1954. The purpose of the art was a commentary on how the subway connected those from different boroughs and therefore people from different races and socioeconomic classes. The painting was made around the time Brooklyn became linked to Manhattan via the subway. The name of the piece, New Lots Express Brooklyn, alludes to the neighborhood it's referring to, New Lots. Located in eastern Brooklyn, the neighborhood is populated by Black and Puerto Rican families, and annexed in 1866 as a part of Brooklyn. In the 1920s, when the new subway system linked Brooklyn and Manhattan, New Lots Avenue Station was open, allowing the people of Brooklyn and Manhattan to intermingle as they made their way throughout New York City. I chose this artifact because as a person who was born in Queens and spent many a times taking the subway to see my grandma in Flushing, I have always found the subway homey, despite the aroma of piss, and the people who have been stripped of any and all social fear, which I guess is what happens if you stay in New York City for an extended period of time. For example, I did see a guy stripping on the subway, and it was kind of awesome and concerning to see how nobody seemed to care. Anywho, I have a love for public transportation and always wish states like Maryland had better infrastructure to provide for public transportation. This artwork ties to urbanism as it captures the essence of urban life through this dynamic snapshot of everyday life for the New Yorkers at the time. For most in the city, the subway is their mode of transportation, and whether it's getting to work or getting groceries, it is a system in which they interact with almost daily. And if it was not for the urban infrastructure of the subway system, the social fabric and connectivity of the city would be wildly different. The subway serves as a vital link in the movement and interaction between different communities, shaping the urban landscape. This ties into my second topic, local community and culture. The depiction of individuals from diverse backgrounds mingling on the subway reflects the multiculturalism inherent in New York City's urban landscape. The subway serves as a microcosm of the city's diverse cultural tapestry, where people from different races, ethnicities, and socioeconomic backgrounds come together to get to the different places they need to go to in the city. The artwork captures the shared rhythms and experiences of urban life, reflecting cultural norms and rituals which shape community dynamics. This artifact highlights America's multiculturalism and the plurality of the American experience. It offers an interpretation of the diversity and interconnectedness of all Americans. Though at times there are moments of disconnection and tension amongst groups, the artwork reminds us that all people and experiences work together to contribute to the fabric of American society. In conclusion, these three artifacts present a multifaceted exploration of critical themes within American society and culture. One aha moment I had was the stark reminder of America's racist history. Although I have personally experienced being told outright racist remarks as an Asian American, artifacts like this and their preservation show how deeply integrated and how far back racism actually goes in America. My second aha moment was actually a connection between the overtly Oriental depiction of the Chinese man and the vanity. As an Asian American and observing the features of the Chinese man on the beer pitcher, it's hard not to see the features of the man on the pitcher and not relate them to my features. In association with the vanity, which represents the influence of beauty standards, often prioritizing Eurocentric features, I was reminded of the systemic biases and inequalities faced by marginalized communities within the context of beauty and representation. Thirdly, both the picture and the painting of the subway prompt reflections on the diversity and interconnectedness inherent in American society. These artifacts underscore the resilience and collective identity forged through the diverse experiences of individuals from various backgrounds. Despite the adversity depicted, such as the racist imagery on the picture targeting the Asian man, these experiences contribute to the fabric of American society and the complexity of our nation. To finish my video, these artifacts all showcase different aspects of American society. They invite us to confront uncomfortable truths like racism and beauty standards, and create a space for engagement through critical dialogue. By looking at moments preserved throughout history, we can analyze and work for a more inclusive and equitable future for all Americans.